hoarding disorder.
My name is Ken Molly, and I was professor of philosophy and environmental studies at UWL in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I retired in December of 2005, moved to Toronto for a few years, 6 years, and then I came back to La Crosse, taught part-time. And then a year ago, I made a decision to move to Europe and to live there. First, I lived in Germany, and now I live in Prague in the Czech Republic. And for those who don't know, my last name, Molly, is a Czech name from my Czech ancestors.
Well, I did my undergraduate training at North Dakota State University and my master's and doctorate degree at Argosy University, American School of Professional Psychology in Washington, D.C. And while I was there, I leaned a little bit more toward cognitive behavioral theory therapy, and that's what I specialize in still now, about 14 years later. And part of my doctoral externship, I specialized in anxiety disorders, and that's what I continue to do now. I did my internship at a state hospital and Chase Bruxton Health Clinic, working with people with HIV and AIDS, and learned a lot through all of my training. And now I'm in private practice and have been since 2006, and mostly specialize in fear-based conditions and work with people of all ages. My youngest client is 2, my oldest is in their 80s.
I would say it's interesting to study, but it's hard to know the answer to your question, what are emotions? I mean, I would add one thing from my own philosophical point of view, which stresses experience rather than worrying whether emotions are physiologically based or non-physical based, is more about what is our experience of emotions and what can we know about that experience.
I think looking at emotions and determining whether or not they're real is kind of a tricky question, because emotions have a real impact on people's lives, but it doesn't mean that emotion itself is a reliable source. And I always remind my clients that feeling is not fact. So it's important to look at that and to understand that something may have an emotional impact on me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's accurate information. So I specialize in obsessive compulsive disorder. So people have very strong emotion all the time to false alarms, feeling like they're going to get cancer by touching a doorknob, for example. And that feeling that they have in that situation is feels very true and very real, even though cognitively they oftentimes understand that, okay, I know I can't really get cancer by touching this doorknob, but it feels real, therefore people engage in compulsive behaviors. So I think emotions have a big impact on people. There are some situations that people really do perceive their emotion to be real information. So the 16-year-old girl who's dating the motorcycle boyfriend, her emotions are very strong in that situation, and she'll oftentimes listen to her emotions as if they're fact. So I think there's a number of situations where people do fall into that trap of thinking that emotions are accurate. So sometimes they can be, but they're not always accurate. And I think understanding that emotions are just one source of information for people. And what meditation does is it gives people a little distance from that emotion so that they can weigh out all the other information available to them to see, was that emotion accurate or not. In some situations, emotions are adaptive, and in some situations, they're not adaptive. Or maybe, so compulsive hoarding, for example, that if I really struggled or I'm living in a country where I don't have a lot of things, it's adaptive in that situation to listen to those emotions and save things. But as I moved into a new situation where maybe, now I'm living in the United States, there's lots of things available to me, that hoarding behavior and things like that can develop based off of fear and other emotions that maybe were adaptive in one scenario, but no longer adaptive in another. So it's really important to step outside of our emotions and know that I need to be flexible. I need to practice mindfulness to know maybe it worked here, but not in this situation. To just always have the clear awareness as to all the other information available to us, and I think meditation is a great practice in being able to see things more clearly.
The history of neuroscience
which is not the oldest discipline. I don't know, 40, 50 years ago. In the last 30, 20 years, it's much more important for research and study, as are emotions. A lot of studies are done with emotions. But neuroscience, up until very recently, was pretty much about understanding the physiological aspects of everything, actually. And for many years, physical neuroscience would say that even consciousness is located in the brain. There are many, a bunch of research done that way, and they proved by poking at certain, or pressing, or making at certain points in the brain that actually consciousness arose. And so then they made the conclusion that even consciousness is physiologically based, that is, in the brain. Okay, but recently some neuroscientists have come to the conclusion, that there must be something that is not physical, that is an essential part of us. And so I think one person that comes to mind is Daniel Siegel. I think his book is called Mind Brain, but I don't remember. But he says that we're made up of, the thing that makes us function and work, there's three things. One is our relationships, the brain, and the mind. And sometimes he calls the mind mindfulness. And it's very clear in his research that the mind that he's talking about is not physically based. So that would be, okay, so then to get to your question, and what he says is, and he uses this as the example of the brain, and up here is the prefrontal lobe, and that when I experience an emotion, and something we should say here is that when emotions come up, they're almost always reactive. They're almost always reacting to something. So if my partner says something that makes me angry, I like to say my partner made me angry. We'll get to that in a minute. But really, my anger is a reaction. Okay. So what Siegel says is we have the opportunity when that emotion comes up in the nervous system, in the emotional system, then we have, most of the time, we react right away without stopping and saying, wait a minute, is this how it has to be? And he says, with this mindfulness training, we can actually stop that emotion from taking hold of us. We can actually create a space where that emotion doesn't have to drag us along or trap us or even cause suffering. He does say that it's a split second. There's not a, if I have fear or if I have anger or jealousy, that if something happens where jealousy comes up or anger comes up, they come up very quickly. And so we have this ability then in this three-part structure, brain, relationships, and mindfulness, the mindfulness or awareness factor, we can develop that so that we can learn, we can train ourselves to actually stop letting that emotion take us over.
I think that there are a number of ways to deal with emotions. I think some of them adaptive, some of them maladaptive, but I guess I'll focus a little bit more on the adaptive ways to handle emotions. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, I teach people a number of different techniques and strategies, like relaxation training, meditation, cognitive restructuring, and exposure and response prevention are the ones that I use most often in my practice to help people, especially with fear-based conditions. Meditation is a great strategy in being able to have a really useful technique to deal with a number of different disturbing emotions. And really that's what meditation does, is it gives people distance from disturbing emotions, because it's a lot easier to decide what you're going to do about something or just to wait an emotion out or know that time is going to help when we get some distance from it. Whenever we try to fix something right in front of our eyes, it's very difficult. But what meditation does is it gives people a little bit more distance from that, so they know just how much that they should, first of all, listen to that emotion, and then to see if there's any other thing that they may or may not need to do to handle that emotion. And with meditation, meditation, there's actually a lot of literature. Of course, here in the West, we need empirical backing for strategies, and we're getting that now with meditation, and we're finding that in brain scans, it actually shows some differences in areas of the brain that have to do with fear and anxieties, that with a meditation practice, and even over like an 8-week period of time, there's differences that we can see in brain scans, actually quieting down some of those brain areas, and also starting to brighten up areas of the brain that are thought to be associated with pleasure or joy. So I think that there's a number of benefits to meditation. And of course, it's nothing new. It's something that's been practiced for a few thousand years. So I think that that's probably enough empirical evidence right there. But of course, we want a little bit more as Westerners, and to really understand the mechanisms behind meditation. And we're starting to understand a little bit into that now, which is really fascinating. And in clinical practice, it just works, which is great to teach it to people of all ages and to see them benefit from that, and to be able to have that distance from emotion, so that they don't get as caught up in these patterns of behavioral and thinking that are just not very helpful.
Of course, there are lots of studies have been done in meditation in general, and there's a lot of experience in Buddhist meditation where the emotions, which are clearly part of the mind in the Buddhist teaching, whether it's Tibetan Buddhism or Zen Buddhism or whatever Buddhism it is, that the emotions are in the mind. Okay, now, the other thing to say is that the mind is not so separated from everything else, but that's a whole other story. So one of the goals of meditation in general, and one of the goals of Buddhist meditation, is to develop, I'm going to use now the word develop, the experience of having space in the mind, or the experience where you can actually be so aware that you can choose to let this anger drag you down, wrap you up, twist you up, and actually not let it do that. Okay, so that's one of the goals of Buddhist meditation. So from that perspective, whether you're a Buddhist or not, it doesn't really matter. If this experience, if this is possible for Buddhists, it's also possible for everybody. Anyway, so that means then that I gain a space of mind, a space in my mind, so that when the emotions arouse, somebody says something that normally would make me angry, or I would normally get disturbed by what this other person has done, like not clean out the kitchen sink, or my partner leaving her underwear in the bathroom, dirty underwear, whatever it is that triggers the emotion, we can actually get to a place where we can recognize that staying away from that makes us happier.
I think it's really important for people to understand that while meditation has its roots in Eastern religion, it doesn't mean that somebody is practicing a different religion by practicing different meditation strategies. I think the example that I like to use is like eating healthy. It's something that is just good for your body, it's good for your mind to practice meditation. And there are some specific meditations that are more closely associated with different religious practice, but there's a lot of meditations that are very general meditations that anybody can practice and anybody can benefit from. Meditation is a great strategy to teach to children. I think that there's a number of benefits that come from that, and actually people are looking at that right now, and they're starting to use meditation in some of the most violent schools in our country, and noticing significant differences in dropout rates, in crimes that are happening in the schools. So it's interesting to look at that. And I do meditation with my 2.5-year-old. So there's lots of different strategies that you can work on, starting just with breathing exercises, doing things like loving kindness meditation. That first is starting with a few breaths, and then I alter it a little bit working with children of repeating kind of a mantra phase of may I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I be peaceful and at ease, and going through that a few times. And then making those good wishes outward. So may all little boys and girls be safe. May all little boys and girls be healthy. May all little boys and girls be happy. May all little boys and girls be peaceful and at ease. And what we're doing is we're practicing compassion, right? And that's something that's so important, I think, especially for our children now that are missing some of that human contact. So it really helps to build that empathy, that compassion for other people and animals and a number of different things, just to help children deal with their emotions, deal with their frustrations in a number of different ways. So another exercise I like is doing a little meditation jar where you'll fill up a jar, like a mason jar full of water. And then when children are having a tough time, you just grab a little bit of glitter and you say, okay, this glitter represents your thoughts. And you put that in the jar and you mix it up and you see the glitter floating around in there. And what we'll do then is we'll sit the jar and we'll sit our mind and we'll focus on the jar until all the glitter settles on the bottom. And children notice that intensity of their emotion fades. Just like the glitter settles, their emotion settles as well. So there's a number of exercises that, we practice as adults too, but exercises that children really tend to enjoy and benefit from as well. It's nice to have a visual, I think, with children, and then it kind of gives them a timeline too, like, okay, what do I do? I think children, especially in the West, are so used to following direction that they how long is this going to last? Am I doing it right? So I think it gives them something to focus their mind on without getting as caught up in concepts of, is this right? Is this wrong? How long do I have to do this for? So I think it's getting some of those things out and just focusing on the glitter and having the glitter represent mind and thought, I think is very useful.
Yeah. So, I would say, as you say, that what comes to mind is, for example, most emotions, disturbing emotions, disconnect us from other people. Anger, jealousy, pride, attachment, aversion, all those emotions, they disconnect us from others, from other energies, okay? And we're not meant to be disconnected, isolated robots. We're meant to be connected on many levels, emotional, social, spiritual, sexual level. We're meant to have that connection, and that's what makes us whole, okay? So when I realize, let's take pride, for example, okay? So when I realize that my pride and the power of my pride is isolating me from others, and therefore isolating me from the fullness of my own life, then with that awareness, I can when I'm aware that that's what pride is doing, then I can transform that into a way where I realize that, it's really the wisdom of equality. We're all the same. We're all equal. We all shit in the same way, and we all have headaches in the same way. So it's not like I'm better than anybody. That's my disturbing emotion of pride. But that we're the same, and we all have the same goal. We have the same. We want the same conditions for happiness, and when I realize that, then I can transform the energy of that emotion into a positive, useful thing for myself and beneficial for others.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just how like you said, just how our mind works and all these little neurotic behaviors that we all get into. But when you're aware of it, that of course that's awesome. It's awesome. And then just practicing this new script or coming up with, different thoughts or mantra or something to help when you see that. So you're not like come on, why can't I just, why do I keep going there? To be like, isn't that interesting that my mind keeps going there? So how can I bring it back in? Just like a puppy, right? So it's just bringing it back until it finally, it sits for longer and longer amounts. But just being able to recognize mind. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think so. That's just looking at a new script, right? So and laughing at our mind when that happens. So I know that kind of a time when I really felt it, I used to fly off, I come from a short fused family, and so I used to I get so mad, and my computer, I'm gonna throw it out the window, type of responses all the time. And so I know when I had Fiona, I was so stressed out because I was running late for work and I was trying to feed her, and so I'm trying to dump baby food into this little jar because she was only getting half of it, and I didn't want to spill it down the side, so I tried to fling it up like this so it, not drip. And when I did that, I dropped it on the floor, and like this little amount of baby food like exploded everywhere. It was like on my cupboards, it was on me, all over the place. And I felt that anger like creeping in, and just so I wanted to be like, God damn it! Like I can't believe this happened! Like I'm late for work, right. But I felt it, and I could see it coming. And I was like, do I want to go there? Do I not want to go there? And instead, I just started laughing. I just was like, no, I don't want to go there. This is like a ridiculous moment, right? So, like, how did this happen? And so that was really useful for me, is to recognize that was a, like, pivotal point, just understanding this emotion and kind of seeing that and not just reacting to it. And then I kind of laughed. It was fine. Like, I cleaned up. It wasn't that big of a deal. When you're a mom, you have baby food and stuff all over you all the time anyway, so who cares? And Fiona, I'm watching her watch me, right? So, because she's learning all the time. And then she's like, at first, she's like, you know, what's going to happen? You know, and then she's all like, all right. So yeah, I always try to remember that. Of course, it doesn't happen all the time. I get pissed plenty. You know, where I fall into old patterns. But I think it's really useful. And the more I meditate, the more I feel that distance and not being so reactive. And that's the difference, that reactivity versus being proactive with emotions, as deciding, like, you know, rather than just reacting, being able to decide, okay, this is how I'm going to handle this.
Actually, I want to say something, okay? So since I'm a teacher, and I taught all of my life, and I was a very good teacher at UWL, just ask anybody there, I would like to say that to your audience, your classmates, for example, that if they can start thinking in this direction and seeing where say a longer lasting happiness comes, and then I would say getting drunk every night, but they actually do that in Prague more than they do in La Crosse. So, well, some people get drunk every night in Prague. Anyway, they can take this, you know, into the future, and they got many years to improve their lives, to be more beneficial, and to have more happiness. And so I wish that for them. At least give it a try. I mean,